You're on Meet the Press and welcome to the program, Arthur Sinodinos. Good morning, Senator.
Good morning, Paul. Great to be with you.
Great to have you. Well, significant swing to the Liberals in the ACT election yesterday. Would you join your colleague Liberal Senator Gary Humphries and urge your Liberal mates in the ACT to talk turkey with the Greens and form a minority government backed by the Greens?
Oh, Gary's on the ground in the ACT. I won't presume to give the ACT Liberals advice. It's up to them what they do. I think it's true in the past that they've been pretty wary about joining with the Greens. I think the result on the weekend in Canberra has been a pretty decisive rejection of the Labor-Greens alliance. There's been a swing to us of over 6%. It's our highest primary vote ever in the ACT, and in the outer suburbs, the sort of parts of Canberra that are more like the rest of Australia, the swings were around 10%. So Zed's message, he's our leader on cost of living and the rest, has gone down pretty well. But I'll leave what they do about government in the ACT up to the experts in the ACT Liberal Party.
Yeah, are you being a bit cautious there because federally it wouldn't be necessarily a good look to have a Liberal government backed by the Greens?
Well, our experience at the federal level has been that the Greens, in their dealings with the Labor Party, have encouraged the Labor Party to break promises and essentially to do things which a majority of their fellow Australians are against. And so, you know, I think we've got to be very careful about getting in bed with the Greens.
Now, the result, of course, it's a bit for everybody in the ACT. The Labor primary vote actually went up. Would that reinforce the view of the federal Liberals that basically Canberra's a Labor stronghold, and maybe Tony Abbott, who will be looking for savings, we'll go into this a bit later, could take a leaf out of Campbell Newman's book and go for broke against the go for broke looking for savings from the public service?
Look, based on these numbers, I think we could win the seat of Canberra if there were a by-election, as we did in 1995. As to what we do about budgetary policy, that's not driven by whether we think we can get away with something because of the voter composition of a particular constituency. You do it on the basis of whether you think it's the right thing to do, and in the case of the size of government, whether you think you've got government of the right size and whether you can deliver services in other more efficient ways.
Just going to the style, as it were, of Tony Abbott, many see him as the most negative opposition leader since Simon Crean, and a case in point would be the way in which he dealt with the Security Council bid. The Abbott opposition is the first in history not only not to support a bid for the Security Council, but in its latter stages to work against it. This could backfire on Tony Abbott, couldn't it?
Look, the first point to make is that Tony Abbott's job from when he became opposition leader was to hold the government accountable. Now, as such, and as Bill Kelty once remarked, it's a role of an opposition to try and knock the government off. And you do that by holding them to account on their promises and what they said they would do, and then on their performance, and then on delivering your own alternative policies. That Tony has done really well. That's why he's been so effective. And yes, it's meant on occasion he's got to be pretty strong in his criticism. But the result is that he's put the Liberal Party and the National Party in an election-winning position, and I think that's something a lot of people should remember. When it comes to the Security Council bid, Paul, we all welcome the fact that we have won, and congratulations to all those who are involved, including in the Department of Foreign Affairs, for that victory. But our point was always we've got to be careful that we don't spend so much money on that or shift our foreign policy priorities too much to try and win the bid that we queer our pitch on other issues. And as we've said before, there are major issues in our own region, as you're only too well aware, Paul, including what's happening in relation to people smuggling, that really these are major priorities for us. And go and talk to someone like Professor Hugh White at the ANU, and he'll tell you about the difficulties that being a temporary member of the Security Council of the UN can create in terms of our conduct of foreign policy over the next few years. So there are real challenges ahead.
So I'd just like you to look at something. The nasty tone of politics is the subject of hot debate. Many point to Tony Abbott, as I've been discussing, but there was a surprising source that doesn't blame him entirely. Look at this.
I think Lindsay's Punch and Judy analogy is about right as well. There's a certain terrible familiarity between whack, whack, whack and whack. And of course it takes two to tango in this.
No doubt the other partner is Julia Gillard. I see that Maxine McHugh, the former member for Bennelong, has written a book. It's seen in terms of Kevin Rudd making another play. Do you suspect he will be the Prime Minister going into the next election?
Look, it's hard to tell at this stage. There's still a lot of people in the Labor Party, particularly in the Cabinet, who don't like Kevin, and they did their best to shred his character and his policy integrity in February when we had that very ugly leadership stoush. What all this underlines is that the government's been divided for a long time. Maxine McHugh's book underlines the fact that Julia Gillard has a lot of questions to answer about what she knew and when she actually got involved in destabilising her own leader, rather than working with him to deal with the problems that Labor faced in 2010.
Coming up after the break, when we return with the panel, who's got the bigger budget black hole, Labor or Liberal? While in the US election, it's who's got the bigger pension.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension? Have you looked at your pension?
I've got to say.
Mr. President, have you looked at your pension?
You know, I don't look at my pension. It's not as big as yours, so it doesn't take as long.
Let me give you some...
Blood has been shed this day.
I feel the weight of my destiny crushing me.
Wars cannot be won without taking risks. Goodbye, Earth and Pendragon.
New Merlin, 6:30 tonight on 10.
1,500 days interest-free at Domain. Update, upgrade and upsize now with this massive offer. TVs, audio, washers, fridges, cooking appliances, laptops, tablets, cameras, phones. With no deposit and no interest until 2016. 1,500 days interest-free. Now at...
Hundreds of Mortgage Choice customers are celebrating their savings. We've refinanced their home loans and on average saved them $10,000 each over 5 years. To see how much we can save you, talk to Mortgage Choice today.
Dettol Glen 20 is superior to ordinary air fresheners. It kills 99.9% of odour-causing bacteria at the source, eliminating odours in the air to truly freshen your home.
I love the indoors.
Dettol Glen 20. Fresh air everywhere.
Want to win the ultimate home entertainment package valued at over $9,000? You can at Civic. Rent Prometheus on Blu-ray or DVD, fill out the entry form and you're in the draw. Enter in-store or online before November 19th.
Have a hot night in with Civic.
Don't sweat it. Stay cool with Domain. Buy an air conditioner now on no deposit with no repayment and no interest for 18 months. Great deals on our huge range and all the big brands. Don't sweat it. Stay cool now. Only at...
Hi, I'm Kevin Rudd. What you might not know is that when I was a little kid, I got pretty sick. I had rheumatic fever and it damaged my heart, making me a heart kid. 6 Australian kids are born with heart disease every day, and sadly, many don't survive. It's a frightening journey for them and for their families. We can help these heart kids and their families by supporting the Heart Kids charity. So please, join me and get behind Heart Kids today.
1, 2, 3.
Wake up, Jeff!
What's wrong? Vinnie's needs our help. Did you know that the St Vincent de Paul Society does a lot of great work for thousands of people who need a helping hand?
That's right, Vinnie's changes lives every day.
But they can't do it without everyone's help.
How can we help?
Call 13 18 12
or go to vinnies.org.au to make a donation to the Vinnie's Appeal.
So get a wiggle on and
help Vinnie's today.
You're on Meet the Press with Senior Liberal Senator and Strategist Arthur Sinodinos, and welcome to the panel, Patricia Cavellis, the Australian, and Steve Price from Radio 2GB.
Good morning.
To you both. The opposition says the government has $120 billion worth of promises to fund. It's been a little coy on its own budget black hole.
Finding 50, 60 or 70 billion is about identifying waste, identifying areas where you do not need to proceed with programs.
That is the sort of order of magnitude unless we make significant decisions about programs and waste and all the rest.
Good morning, Senator. Now, hasn't the magnitude of the cuts needed to bring the budget back to surplus increased dramatically since both those statements were made?
Well, Patricia, we're about to find out because it looks like the mid-year economic and fiscal outlook could be released in the next week or so, and we'll get a feel for how big the short-term black hole is for the government and how they've tried to fill that black hole. And, of course, as Paul quoted, the $120 billion black hole, that's actually a figure compiled by the Australian Financial Review rather than us or anybody else. And the challenge for us is, once we know the baseline in the budget, we'll have a better idea of what the black hole is that still confronts Australians over the next period. I can assure you of one thing. This government's made an art over the last few budgets of overestimating revenue. And part of the reason they're in this mess now is they overestimate revenue, they spend accordingly, and then they find themselves increasingly having to catch up by finding other ways of cutting spending or raising revenue to meet their budget targets when they fall short.
So considering the revised MyEFO figures are looking so dire, I mean by all accounts, and obviously the government's strategic leaking of their own budget hole, does this increase pressure on your side of politics to support all of the cuts that they may put forward and all of the tax hikes?
Look, Patricia, we'll make that judgment once we see the quality of the cuts and the actual measures, both the any revenue raises as well as any spending cuts. But I do want to make this point. We're in this awful situation now where they're having to make all of these spending cuts because they haven't, over a period, had a more medium-term approach to budget policy, which gives them a capacity to generate surpluses without having to do all of this emergency cutting and raising of revenue. And that's when you get bad decisions, is when you're having to do this in the shadow of a looming budget deficit.
But
sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So you were at the centre, at the heart of the Howard government. You're a trusted advisor to John Howard. You're now in the middle of Tony Abbott's office. How are you advising him to cope with this attack on his personal character? What are you telling him?
Well, look, I'm not in there every day advising him. He doesn't need me to advise him every day. But what I say to him privately, what I say to him publicly is he's got to keep pushing the case against the government. He's got to push both the case about why the government has fallen short on various policies and promises and why we can create a better and more positive alternative. There's no point getting into the politics of personality. I think that should be left to Gillard. That spinmeister in her office, John McTiernan, summed it up very well when he said that his philosophy is to kill one's opponents, and that's what they want to do. They want to spend your money and they want to kill their opponents, and that's their way back to re-election.
Isn't it your strategy too to kill your opponents? I mean, looking at the strategy you've taken to Parliament, you'd think you've been trying to kill Julia Gillard.
No, our strategy has been to hold them to account. If Julia Gillard had not broken her promises about no carbon tax under a government she leads, that is the principal reason she would not be in this mess today. And Tony Abbott had to keep her to account for that. Now, if we're saying that it's negative to ask a government to keep its promises, then we've probably gone to the Macquarie Dictionary and changed the meaning of the word negative.
Just back on the boat issue briefly, Tony Abbott was in Indonesia and he won't talk about what he said to SPY about towing back the boats. But Nauru's obviously not working. Is it time the opposition revisited support for the Malaysia solution? Because this isn't working, is it?
Look, my impression is that the government's been pretty half-hearted about even putting Nauru and Manus Island on the table. And what they've got to do is they've got to spell out clearly that no advantage by coming via the people smuggling route means that you will spend a long time in a place like Manus or Nauru. Now, that may sound harsh, but the fact is we have an obligation to the millions of refugees across the world that they will get a fair shake in getting a place in our refugee and humanitarian program. And by global standards, we run one of the most generous on a per capita basis, refugee and humanitarian programs. Everyone's got to get a fair shake, and you don't get a fair shake if you come via a people smuggler.
Senator, changing the theme a little bit, do you think that Tony Abbott has a problem with women?
No, I don't. I think, to be honest, he likes women, he's comfortable with women. I think what's arisen here is because on occasion in the past he espoused socially conservative views on a number of subjects, it means some women on the left have decided that the best way to get at him is to stereotype him along the lines of those views and use that to say that somehow he's some sort of throwback to the 50s or something like that. He's a thoroughly modern man, he's got a great family, 3 girls, and he understands the needs and the choices that modern families have to make.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning, Senator Arthur Sinodinos.
A pleasure, Paul. Thank you.